has one word just cost Prince Harry $67 million. And by the way, it's $67 million he don't have because the money is running out. This is the new reporting, interestingly, from a longtime ally of Prince Harry. Indeed, a longtime propagandist of Prince Harry, Dan Wakeford. He is reporting in his Celebrity Intelligence fresh details of this cost hearing over the massive loss in the case against the Daily Mail. And of course, not all 67 million is Harry going to have to pay out. But the point being, he don't have money to spend at the moment. The inheritance is running up. The bills are stacking up. There is no big money payment coming in from Spotify or Netflix. Things are tight. The pressure is on. They want to maintain the lifestyle, as we saw this week from Meghan Markle's drop of her holiday pictures, which show that absolutely she still intends to travel by private jet. Absolutely, she still intends to live a lavish lifestyle that I would argue these two can't afford. And as I have been reporting for some time, that is also behind Harry's deranged battle to secure permanent government-funded armed protection paid for by British taxpayers because he wants to cut off that $3 million security bill. So we're going to get into all of this today with Paula Froelich, who is the host of Paula Froelich Uncensored. But Paula, first, I just want to read you out this reporting from Dan Wakeford in his Celebrity Intelligence. It's interesting, of course, because for such a long time, as you know, he was very much Team Harry and Meghan. But now he writes, 2 weeks from now, Mr. Justice Nicklin sits down again, this time to decide who pays for the most expensive privacy trial in British legal history. And the man he's deciding it for is the same one who just called his verdict a whitewash. Prince Harry and 6 fellow claimants, including Elton John and Liz Hurley, lost every one of the 97 allegations they brought against associated newspapers, with Nicklin ruling that suspicion, even where understandable, was not enough, and that the claimant's key witness had his credibility comprehensively undermined after disowning his own testimony mid-trial. Harry and Baroness Doreen Lawrence responded within hours, calling the ruling a complete and obvious whitewash. Associated now wants roughly £50 million back, with that costs hearing set for July 29 and 30th, so that is next week, in front of Nicklin himself. Don't miss a single update on the stories that actually matter. I'm breaking down the news every day, so make sure you subscribe to never miss a beat. Click that subscribe button right now. Costs hearings let judges weigh how the losing side behaved, not just whether they lost. And branding the ruling a whitewash before that hearing is exactly what litigators coach clients against. Doubly so when the language reads as an attack on the judiciary itself, rather than just an adverse result. English costs rules explicitly bake conduct into the calculation. Under Civil Procedure Rule 44.2, judges can move a losing party onto indemnity costs, a tougher standard, where the burden flips onto the loser to prove the bill was unreasonable if their conduct falls out of the norm. There's precedent for exactly this kind of attack costing real money. In one case, a litigant who made baseless claims that a court officer had acted dishonestly was hit with an indemnity cost order worth roughly £80,000. Worth noting, that case involved conduct inside the litigation itself, not a statement issued after judgment. So whether Harry's post-verdict comment factors into Nicklin's decision on July 29 is untested rather than certain. But the palace's alarm points at something separate from the cost maths, a constitutional discomfort within a senior royal, even one step back from official duties, being seen to attack the judicial system that operates in his own father's name. It fits a pattern with Harry regardless, where the instinct to respond in the moment tends to beat the discipline of staying quiet. He called a previous defeat a good old-fashioned establishment stitch-up, and both times the emotional reaction landed before anyone could calculate whether it was the smart one. Insurance and outside funders, including backing tied to Hacked Off in the late Max Mosley's estate, may absorb much of the bill. So this likely isn't a personal check from Harry's own account. Still, if July 29th goes badly and if the palace's private unease becomes public commentary, whitewash will look less righteous defiance and more like Harry letting feeling override strategy again. So Paula Froelich, what do you make of that analysis? And do you really believe that there are just the funds sitting there? Because if there really were, why would Prince Harry, according to your reporting, have asked for more money from Elton John, who reminded him, well, no, I'm actually not your ATM?
No, yeah, he did. And here's the deal. How do I put this? Dan is kind of stating the obvious. There is actually more than one word. It was the entire statement about how they came to court. They were seeking justice and accountability. They received neither. Now, the other issue is this was not an off-the-cuff, angry statement. They knew about the verdict beforehand. And also, frankly, I don't think Harry's smart enough to come up with an off-the-cuff statement. So this statement was prepared at least a day in advance. And what was interesting about it, it was only Baroness Lawrence and Harry on it. Elton John, who knows quite well how the courts work, didn't sign it and has
So
kept
significant,
quiet.
Paula.
And so they are also very at odds because, of course, who has the bulk of the cash? Elton, not Harry. The other issue is that the Daily Mail is going after 50 million pounds. Now, a lot of people are saying insurance is going to cover this. However, the insurance company is likely, if they haven't already, alerted the team they're not going to pay, or they're going to fight having to pay because, first of all, the case should never have been brought, as Justice Nicklin warned, and then in his judgment said there was absolutely no evidence. Second of all, the way that Harry acted in court and frankly lied in court. And I think the insurers will say, no, we don't have to pay. This was all in bad faith. So they could be on the hook for even more. I'm not sure where Dan got the 67 million pounds because right now Harry's side is saying everything is capped at 4 million per side. The Daily Mail are saying they actually spent 50. Now we know Harry's team did not charge because they were just hoping for a percentage if they won. However, at the end of the day, it'll be 50 million if they uncap everything. Do I think it's going to be 50 million? No. Will they get more than 4? Likely. But the whole point is Wednesday, grab your popcorn because the days of our Monteceto lives, summer edition, is about to hit a crescendo.
Sir Elton John has reportedly slammed the vault door completely shut, refusing to act as Harry's personal ATM after their massive, high-stakes privacy lawsuit against the British press completely imploded in court. From mounting legal fees and lost Netflix contracts to shocking new reports that Prince George and the next generation of royals will never speak to their uncle again, the financial and personal fallout in Monteceto is reaching an absolute breaking point. Let's start with a legal catastrophe that is sending shockwaves through the UK judicial system. Over on Wootton Outspoken, royal commentator Dan Wakeford and journalist Paula Froelich broke down the sheer scale of the defeat suffered by Prince Harry and his co-claimants in their long-running battle against Associated Newspapers, the publishers of the Daily Mail and Mail, on Sunday. Harry and his 6 high-profile co-claimants, which included Sir Elton John, Elizabeth Hurley, and Baroness Doreen Lawrence, brought 97 separate allegations of privacy invasion to court. The verdict? They lost every single one of them. Mr. Justice Nicolon ruled that suspicion alone was not enough to prove illegal information gathering, and noted that key witnesses had their credibility comprehensively shattered during cross-examination. Associated Newspapers is now seeking roughly £50 million, which translates to nearly $67 million in legal costs. And here is where Harry's personal recklessness made a bad situation infinitely worse. Just hours after losing the case, Prince Harry and Baroness Lawrence released a fiery public statement branding the High Court judges' ruling a complete and obvious whitewash. Under British legal standards, specifically Civil Procedure Rule 44.2, a judge can move a losing party onto what is called indemnity costs if their conduct falls outside the norm. By publicly attacking the judiciary and calling a senior judge's ruling a whitewash right before the judge decides who pays the bill, legal experts say Harry may have handed the court a bulletproof reason to make him pay maximum damages.
And I am there for it, Paula, because he deserves this because of the total arrogance, which I think has led him to believe that he doesn't have to follow normal rules, which is why, as you point out, he released that statement along with Doreen Lawrence rather than Elton John. Now, interestingly, Doreen Lawrence doesn't have any financials on this because Harry has assured her, oh, don't worry, we're all going to pay for you, so you don't have to worry about it. So the two people who released the statement, Paula, are the two people I would argue who don't live in the real world, because everyone else is worried about, well, is this going to result in me being bankrupt? Sure, they have relied on very nefarious people, proven criminals, who say, oh, don't worry, we've got all of this money from the dead Max Mosley. That's going to cover all of this. Maybe it will, maybe it won't. But the point is, it's a very different time in Harry's lives when he had all of this money to fritter away. I think one of the biggest stresses in the marriage within Harry and Meghan at the moment is the financial pressure, Paula. The stories about Harry and Meghan, the establishment and the media are working overtime to suppress. I'm Dan Wootton. This is Outspoken. Subscribe right now for free if you want the truth straight.
Oh, absolutely. Now, there are 2 points I want to make. Number one, Harry and Elton assured everyone, Liz Hurley, Sadie Frost, Baroness Lawrence, et al., they would cover costs. You can tell this because Elizabeth Hurley is having the time of her life this summer in the south of France with her boyfriend, Billy Ray Cyrus. They just released photos of them laughing, giggling on the beach, looking like 2 old lesbians from Minnesota. God bless them. But the other point is Meghan was always worried about this case because she always thought, what if we lose? And it was looking at the end of last year that they might lose. And in fact, Harry's team tried to settle at Christmas, at the very, right on the day of Christmas. And the Daily Mail said, no, you brought it this far. We're not settling. In fact, we want to go to court because we want to have our say. There will be no gag order. Goodbye. So Meghan was always aware of the chunk that this could take out of their finances. Now they're already running at a loss. It costs them millions of dollars a year just to stay in the house in Monteceto, keep the lights on and hire security, not to mention the private schooling, etc. So they're not covering even those bills. They have the money in the bank for that, but nothing is being replenished. It's all being sucked out. This will take out an even larger chunk.
The other stress for Harry over the past week, Paula, we believe, is his growing heartbreak over the fact that, surprise, surprise, he has no relationship with the future king. I'm not talking about Prince William, although that's obviously true too, but rather his son, Prince George, who is 13, and Harry very much wanted to have a role in raising. Now, this was discussed on the Daily Tea podcast this week, and I thought they made an interesting point, actually. This is Camilla Tominay, and I think it's Victoria Ward. I think it's Victoria Ward, who's the Deputy Royal Editor. Correct me if I'm wrong. But they make the point that actually George and Charlotte, and probably Louis too eventually, will never want to have their own personal relationship with Harry because they're going to be so horrified when they receive access to the things that Harry said and did about their own parents. And I thought it was very interesting analysis. Now, look, I know they're making light at the end, Paula, but it is actually a more serious point, isn't it? Which is that Harry never thought through the consequences of any of his actions, because actually it wasn't just William and Catherine and Camilla who he was probably ending a relationship with permanently. It was also his niece and his 2 nephews, who, at least for the moment, I mean, you never know, but it's highly unlikely, I think, that there's going to be a split in this family. I mean, they're super tight, super tight, and they've been so well raised. And of course, they're going to be really upset. And we'll also know, by the way, behind the scenes, the strain that the release of Harry's book and all of the publicity circus around it caused William and Catherine.
Well, they've also lived it. Let's be clear. George is 13. He was 3 when Harry and Meghan got married. The next 2 years, from 3 to 5, children are very aware of tension in the household. Can't imagine he doesn't remember that. And since then, they've had no contact. So why would they ever have a relationship? Now, of course, Harry didn't think things through. No one's ever accused him of being the sharpest knife in the drawer. But I think the reason why he would want a relationship with George is not so much for the uncle, but as being an uncle, but for his own children. He understands that his children should be able to understand what royalty is. And TikTok, once William is king, no one's going to be royal in Monteceto anymore. So I think he didn't think things through just because he was in a fugue, as he almost always is. And also because he hadn't really thought about his own children. He didn't have his own children, really. He only had Archie at the time, and he was so little. And of course, Harry didn't realize that William was so mad, he probably would likely never speak to him again. And he didn't realize the rift that telling his truth, and let's use that word in quotes, would cause.
While Harry jumped headfirst into issuing angry press statements, Sir Elton John took a drastically different approach. Elton, who understands British litigation and has navigated courts for decades, conspicuously refused to put his name on Harry's whitewash statement. Reports surfaced that Harry turned to Elton John to help bankroll the skyrocketing legal expenses, but was met with a firm refusal. For years, Observers assumed deep-pocketed allies or third-party litigation funders tied to the late Max Mosley's estate would absorb the blows. But insurance companies are already signaling they may refuse to pay out, citing bad faith and reckless conduct during the trial. This leaves Prince Harry personally on the hook for millions at the exact moment his financial foundation is crumbling. As Paula Froelich pointed out, the Sussexes are running their California operation at a massive annual deficit.
His truth, exactly. His truth. Paula, of course, George did, as you alluded to, turn 13 this week. And there's a first public debate going on about whether we should see more from George. This from the Daily Mail's Palace Confidential that posed this question: should Prince George attend more public engagements now he's a teenager? The results were quite interesting. 5% of people saying he needs to prepare for his future role. Yes. 57% saying no, let him grow up in peace. And 38% saying yes, but only if his parents think it's right. The Royal News Network responding to that poll by writing, this is an interesting question because other families do get their children out a bit more for public engagements. I would argue, especially Princess Estelle of Sweden, who was only a year older and already attending state functions. Also, on her 13th birthday, Princess Leonor gave a speech in Madrid to commemorate the 40th year of Spain's constitution. But on the flip side, there's so much more international pressure on the Brits that I can understand why George would be offered a bit more time before any big, serious public engagements. Paula, I mean, I think I'm in the latter camp, which is that I would like to see a little bit more of George, but only if William and Catherine agree with it, because, of course, we don't know the trials and tribulations that this young guy might be going through. I mean, he seems very well-rounded and very, very much ready for the role. But you know what I'm saying? This is something that has to be determined, I think, by the parents rather than by, in this case, armchair commentators like us, Paula. Not often I say that.
I agree, but also let's remember, Dan, he's 13. He's going through puberty. 13-year-olds, I don't care how well put together you are, how well behaved you seem, your life is a mess. You're 13 and he's starting a new school. Let him be. I mean, the only thing that's important for me that he should learn is at the foot of his grandfather and at the foot of his father to do the actual role that he will have to assume one day. Same as William did.
And then we get some little insight into George, the real Prince George. There's been a few of these mainstream media features over the course of the week. I discussed some of them earlier in the week because it is interesting. These are coming from the Royal Rota. And so what people need to understand is this is not really digging up any dirt or anything like this. This is just for context. This is the official narrative. These are the small little facts about George's life that the palace are prepared to put into the public domain to give us just a little understanding of our future king. So this one's written by Rebecca English. She is, of course, the royal editor of the Daily Mail and also the head of the Royal Rota. And she writes, George is said to hugely look up to his mother. Oh, isn't that lovely? He's a mummy's boy like me, who is described to me as the heart and soul of the family. They share the same sportiness and quietly competitive nature. George, I am told, is a talented triathlete and pretty handy with a tennis racket too, and has inherited both her love of the outdoors and artistic talent. He is also, I am told, obsessed by flying, something of a family trait. Can I just say, no! We need a future king who never wants to get in a bloody plane or a helicopter, okay? Like, this is just one thing I didn't want him to pick up on from his father. Anyway, she goes on, the couple's biggest worry now is not the paparazzi, but an entire generation. This is something we've heard a lot this week, Paula. An entire generation armed with camera phones, instantly uploading snaps and videos for clout and likes. It will be interesting to see how they navigate this challenge, given how determined they have always been to ring-fence their family from the moment George and his siblings were born. One source tells me of an incident in the early summer of 2015 that was something of a tipping point for Kate in particular. She was out on the beach in Norfolk with George, who was just 2, when it became clear they were being stalked by 2 photographers. She had to grab him and go and was deeply upset about the whole thing. It wasn't the first time this had happened, but she was really unhappy and very, very worried. There was a lot of thinking along the lines of, what is this role that William and I in public life are going to do for him? She was desperate for a sense of normalcy for her family. From that moment on, she and the prince worked hard to protect their family life. Another source adds that they have always put their family first, even if it risks public criticism in terms of public duties and visibility, and George's growing confidence in public is happily the end result. William and Catherine have ripped up the royal rulebook and rewritten it themselves, they say. It's prompted debate at times, I know, but I would argue when you see those children who are such a credit to their parents, then you can't disagree with their approach. And actually, Paula, I am totally on board with that. I'm totally on board with every aspect of that. They have got it right. And what you just have to hope, I guess, is that that means that George is going to be able to cope with what happens, because there is going to be a tough balancing act here. What happens if he is in a nightclub and some teenager not really wanting to cause an issue posts a video or something on social media? It's not the fact that the mainstream media are going to run the video. They won't, but it's the fact that it could go viral on social media anyway. So I guess it's quite good they're alert to it, because what you hope, I guess, is that it will mean that George himself is alert to it. But it is a tough thing for a teenager to have to deal with. Of course it is.
Oh, absolutely. I think it's really just going to be, the nightclub is going to be in the palace basement instead of in Fulham or Chelsea. I do think that they have done a very good job doing what they can to give a firm, strong background and family tight-knit. They definitely look towards the Middletons as their role models, as opposed to Charles and the other royal family. And they don't want what happened to Harry to happen to Charlotte or Louis or even George. They don't want a spoiled kid. They want a happy kid. And they want a kid who understands his role, understands his family, and he's been born into it. So at this point, it's all he knows. And unlike you, I'm not mad at him flying a helicopter or a plane.
Oh, God, I am.
For it.
I am. I'm just like, no.
Listen, as long as he gets his full pilot's license and doesn't have to have a co-pilot wherever he goes, that's great. I think it gives him a job. It gives him something to work for, to earn, which is what people like this need.
It's just so dangerous, Paula. I don't look.
Life is dangerous.
Have other hobbies. I know. It's just like, have other hobbies apart from flying a bloody plane or helicopter. Do you know what? It's the one area where I totally thought the late Queen was so good, but even she could never get William to change his mind. It's like, what on earth are you doing flying yourself, the heir to the throne, and then the next two heirs? What on earth are you doing flying them in a helicopter? Do you really want to leave us with King Harry? That's, I know that's not how the late Queen would have put it, but that was very much the sort of undertone. So it's not, I'm not being po-faced, right? It's just that when you're thinking about the succession, Paula, it's like, just don't fly on a plane together. But William was his own man and he wanted things to be like a normal family. So he ignored those rules.
Well, also he was in the army. And he served. So these are the type of roles that they have. And also, to be fair, the rates of accidents of planes and helicopters are far less than, say, cars or even walking across the street being hit by a bus. So true. I am all for it.
You just hear those horror stories, don't you, all the time? But yeah.
And it's also not like they're going to give him a plane or a helicopter that has a malfunction. Everything will be checked over 900 times.
I know, but I'm sure they said the same thing about JFK Jr. Do you know what I mean? It's just, that's
no.
The fear.
That was totally different. No. That fool?
Okay.
First of all, he never should have been flying that plane. Ever. He was not qualified to fly that plane at night, and he was not careful. So there is absolutely no comparison between that. JFK Jr. was reckless.
With no new mega money deals on the horizon, Spotify long gone, and Netflix winding down major payouts, Harry and Meghan are trying to maintain a billionaire lifestyle on a rapidly diminishing royal inheritance. Froelich revealed that Meghan was terrified of this outcome from day one, knowing that a massive legal loss could completely drain what cash reserves they have left. As the financial storm brews in California, the personal fallout in London is growing even more permanent. The panel turned their attention to Prince George turning 13 this week, sparking a deeply serious conversation about Harry's future, or lack thereof, with his niece and nephews. Commentators highlighted analysis from Deputy Royal Editor Victoria Ward and Camilla Tominey, who addressed Harry's bizarre belief that he could somehow maintain a close, supportive uncle relationship with Prince George, Princess Charlotte, and Prince Louis as they grow up. The reality is brutal. George, Charlotte, and Louis were young children when Harry and Meghan walked away, but they lived through the intense stress that Harry's public attacks caused their parents, William and Catherine. Once George has full access to the internet, Netflix, and Harry's own voice reading spare, why would he ever seek out a personal relationship with a man who tried to tear his family down? To cap off this incredible week of Sussex headlines, the discussion turned to Prince Harry's sustainable tourism initiative, Travelist. Richard Eden reported that Travelist recently appointed a brand new director, Graham Miller, who holds some astonishingly extreme views on travel. Yes, you heard that correctly. The guy running Harry's eco-firm literally compared flying on a commercial flight to drunk driving. Meanwhile, just days prior, Meghan Markle dropped new photos showing her jetting off on luxury trips in private aircraft. It is the ultimate rules for the, but not for me, scenario. Critics slammed Travelist as nothing more than a PR vehicle designed to help champagne socialists like Harry whitewash their own massive carbon footprints while preaching to ordinary citizens who save up for a single family vacation a year. Between astronomical high court legal bills, a total freeze-out from Sir Elton John, alienating the future King of England, and staggering private jet hypocrisy, the House of Cards in Monteceto is shaking at its foundation. Is this $67 million court disaster the final tipping point that forces Prince Harry to rethink his entire strategy, or will he double down once again? I want to know what you think. Drop your comments down below. Let's get a real discussion going in the chat. Don't forget to hit that like button if you enjoyed this expanded breakdown, subscribe to the channel, and turn on all notifications so you never miss a video.